Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Under Construction from Pain to Purpose. I'm Ashley Krause, and I'm one of your hosts. And today we are sitting here with Hope Brindle. Me and Hope go way back. We actually were some of the OG navigators with the state of Tennessee. And so that's where I met Hope. And I'm excited to have you on here today because you have got such an inspirational story. So, one of the things that we do is we ask participants to pick their own title. And so, can you share yours and kind of a little bit about why that is what you picked?
So I picked Trust the Fall. And this has actually been something that my sponsor and I have been tossing around as a tattoo idea. Um, so I really had to trust the fall recently. And so it's it's just been like our little mantra for the last month or so. And I thought, what better perfect title?
Nice. So, being a person in recovery, can you share a little bit about your personal experience, maybe your path? What were some of your, supports?
So when I first got sober, it was 2014, and I really got sober because of legal um, consequences. And to be completely honest, I didn't have any intention of staying sober. I really thought, looking back now, this is crazy, but I really thought I'm gonna stay sober for a little while, long enough to get my probation done, and then I'll be able to do it again, and I'll be able to do it normal,
Yeah.
like recreationally. Um, And so I got involved with an IOP that I was required to do for my probation. And I don't know, I just, it started clicking
Yeah.
in that IOP. And I heard in a meeting one time somebody said, when you stop using drugs and alcohol, your life gets better by default. But you have to do some more work, for it to keep getting better. And so I was in that by default area for a
Yeah.
while. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't so bad. And then I graduated the IOP, but I kept going. And so I started like chairing some of the meetings and leading some of the groups and found that I had a real passion for it. And so that's kind of what led me to working in it, but also being involved in the recovery community.
That's awesome. So I hear people often say like, "Oh, you got to fake it till you make it, man." And it's crazy how because you look back and you think, "Wow, some of the things that they said that would work actually work." And there was a conversation I had with a lady the other day, and she's like, "Well, they're just court ordered here." And I'm like, "That's okay because sometimes that's where it starts." Like you said, you weren't in it, for the beginning. You wanted to get through your court process, but little by little, some of that information you retained and you realize like, "Oh, things can get better."
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we get to plant the seed, sometimes we don't get to see it flourish, sometimes we do. Sometimes we're just there in a season to water it. And it doesn't matter, court ordered or not, I mean, changes can start happening.
So would you say that you had a pretty good support network when you first got into recovery?
When I first got into recovery, I didn't really have much of anything. I had a really hard time finding new connections. That was one of the hardest things for me was people, places, things. I didn't have any friends that weren't using drugs and alcohol, and so I started to celebrate recovery in my area, and kind of kind of went from there. I made some really close friends in that, and then I started working at Cherokee in the fields. I made some friends doing that, but it wasn't until I really kind of started getting active in the like outside community, outside of work, that I really started to build those relationships. But um, I would say that was probably the hardest part for me, was just not having those connections at first and not knowing where to look for them.
Yeah, it's scary. I know
Yeah.
for me, I was terrified to like meet new people because there was that fear of meeting the wrong person, and I was like dead set on doing better than what I had before.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me over 2 years before I really truly like had that really strong friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, on the back of my mind, I was like, "Is this going to go south? Like, what if they're using and I don't know about it?"
Yeah.
And so I think people often forget how important it is for us to have those connections because you hear it said that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection, that real human connection. And so for me, when I first started working in the field, like I started meeting people like outside of my home, my safety bubble, and then it kind of was like, oh, there are people like me that are doing this and not using. And so
Yeah.
like I remember meeting you, and it was complete opposite. Like I learned so much from you when I first started working at Cherokee as a navigator. So what were some of like the barriers that you had in early recovery? Was it family support? Was it access to resources?
I would say family support was probably one of the biggest. I come from a family where we don't talk about it. If you don't talk about it, it's not happening. And so my family stayed sick even when I got better. And so that was really, really hard. I would say the other thing that I really struggled with was connections, finding connections, but also I had lots of legal stuff. And so it's hard for me to find work, like meaningful work where I wouldn't be surrounded by drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
That was really, really tough. I can remember waiting tables because that's all I could get at the time and relapsing all the time because it's just there, and not to, you can't blame anybody else for that,
Yeah.
but if it's there, I'm going to do it because I'm an addict, that's just who I am.
Yeah. And society doesn't normalize that very well in the workplace. So finding a place that's accepting and knows that like your recovery's got to be a priority is few and far.
Yeah.
So you talked about doing a little bit of like working at Cherokee, you were doing peer support work. How have you seen that grown from when you first started doing peer work till now?
Yeah. Well, when I first started, it was like brand new and there was so much stigma. So we worked in healthcare and there was so much stigma. We worked in a Well, I worked in a medication assisted treatment clinic. And so the providers there were probably a lot better than most because they worked in addiction. Um, but there was a lot of stigma, like in the hospitals when we went there, in the rest of, healthcare. But now, like I have seen and I have experienced this myself. Medical professionals and other people respect our opinion.
Yes.
I can remember the addiction director um, at a panel one day telling this huge room of psychologists and doctors that I was the expert in the room, and me being like, I don't know if you know who you're talking about. And I remember telling him like, if you ask my family, nobody saw this coming. Like no one is more shocked than me. But yeah, I think they've really come to realize the value of having people in long term recovery um, on staff.
Oh, it gives me chills. I know. I remember those days at
Gosh,
the
it was so
hospital
hard.
going home crying because like
Crying.
nurses were so
Yes.
mean. And now seeing what it is today, and I share this all the time, like seeing nurses so passionate about grabbing their navigator to meet with somebody that had just come in, it's like, man, all those tears I cried, all those hard days and
Worth it.
days I wanted to quit are so worth
So
it.
worth
So where you're at today, can you share a little bit about like your walk over the last couple of years with recovery?
it. Yeah. So, um, like I said, I started getting sober in 2014. And I don't know that I would call myself sober that whole time. There were definitely times when I was working a strong program, but there were definitely times where I was not. And so in 2022, my mom killed herself, and I was about to celebrate 8 years sober. Um, and I got to a point. I had stopped working in the field. That was the first thing. It's kind of like a perfect storm, like all
Yeah.
these things came together. I stopped working in the field because I needed more money, and then she passed away. And so I didn't have that built-in support anymore. I hadn't gone to meetings in a long time. Um, and when she passed away, I like to joke and say I inherited a house, 3 dogs, and a teenager. But it's true,
Yeah.
I had a 18-year-old brother who hadn't graduated high school yet, and it was a lot. And I didn't know what to do. I've been in the rooms of like 12-step programs for a long time, and I've heard like we don't have to use or drink no matter what, but I didn't understand that. Um, and I've always been a firm believer in outside help when it comes to mental health. And so, a prescriber, a psychiatrist of mine, and I decided to try a stimulant. It's a very mild stimulant. And I convinced myself that I could handle that. I could do that. Um, and I justified in my head that I need this. I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell anybody, just me and her kind of thing. And she knew my history, maybe not as educated as should be, but um, you know, day two after getting it, I had started abusing it. And I did that for 3 months. That was in 2022. And one night, I can remember just being so miserable and not knowing why,
Yeah.
the insanity of it. And I remember just saying, like, God or whatever you are, like, if I'm supposed to do something, you're gonna have to make it a billboard because I'll miss it. And for whatever reason, in my head, I just heard you have to get rid of those bills.
Hmm.
Um, and it was like 3 in the morning, and I woke my husband up, and I was like, I've been in a relapse. This is not. I need your help. And so we flushed him for me. And the next day, I found a sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have been going to meetings most days, 2 times a day, at least once a day. In May, I'll have 2 years sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. For me, it was really important to call that a relapse because I could have very easily kept that to myself and not told anybody. Because I had done that before. I had drank at a gathering and then
Yeah.
kept that to myself, which is why I wouldn't really consider myself sober before. Um, so I could have kept that to myself and just kept the status quo going. But I don't think I'd be doing myself or anyone else any favors.
Yeah.
Relapse does not have to be a part of recovery, but it's a part of my story. And I don't want to rob someone else of getting that message just because of my pride and my ego. Um, so yeah, I work with a sponsor. She has a sponsor. I sponsor other women, um, chair meetings, try to take on service commitment, um, try to cultivate a relationship with a power greater than myself and other people in the program. And even not in the program, I have to be surrounded by people in recovery, or else I will um, co-sign my own BS.
Yes.
Like if I'm the only voice I'm listening to, I'm right back out there.
Yeah, we can be our worst enemy at times.
Yes.
Was it a sense of relief when you were able to share that with your husband?
Oh, absolutely. It was like a ton of weight taken off my shoulders because I had kept. I mean, that's a hidden secret.
Secrets keep you sick.
They do, and when you're this person in recovery, and people come to you for recovery questions and meetings, and that's a heavy burden to carry.
I commend you for sharing that though, because, doing recovery work, people are watching us all the time. And even still, like doing the work that we do, we often turn on our own, you know, the ones that work in the field, but yet relapse can happen.
Absolutely.
And so to be so vulnerable and honest about it just shows like it can happen to anybody. If you are not actively working on yourself and having some form of accountability.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important. 12 steps wasn't a part of my recovery. And I eventually realized I needed a little bit more and got a sponsor. And the changes it's made is so important.
Yeah. I think it's so important for people in a leadership position to be vulnerable and share about it because um, if you're not working on your recovery, you're working on your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And we are all only an arm's length away from that. We are one tragedy away.
One fall.
One fall away. I lost my dad when I was 18 to an overdose. And I stayed stuck in that for a long time. But when I lost my mom, I didn't know, but I had a reservation that whole time about if she died, I probably would be done with this. And I was. And I was. Like I never voiced that reservation or justification. And that's what happened. And that, in my experience, that is what happens when I'm the only voice I hear.
Loss is hard. And I've realized being in recovery, well, one of the things about recovery is, you get your feelings back. So it goes both good and bad. And so experiencing such a profound loss, what advice would you give somebody that might be in early recovery and going through something similar to handle that loss?
Yeah. Um, For me, in the beginning, it was basic. So like drink water, eat food, that was like very basic, and I had to start there. Um, the other thing was talk it to death. Talk about it. Do not keep it in. Um, and I still get. I mean, we're going on 3 years. But in April, it'll be 3 years that she's been gone, and I still get in my head like I know this person is so tired of hearing about my mom, but I miss her terribly, and I'm gonna keep talking about it, or else like I won't care anymore, and that's just gonna be what it's gonna be. And um, lean on your support. If you don't have them, find them. Just find them. And for people who are trying to support someone going through a loss, sometimes we just need a friend to sit with us in the mud
And listen.
and just listen. Sometimes I would just cry and I just needed my friend to sit there, not say a word, just sit there with me in it. It was the kind of loss for me that takes your breath away. Like takes your breath. What is my life gonna be? It was a very lonely feeling because I was an orphan at 29. Um, and overnight had all this responsibility now. I don't have my own kids, so I've got this teenager that I didn't even raise.
That is also experiencing a profound loss.
Also, yes. Um, I just my best advice is to find your people and stay there. Stay there. And people in the rooms always say keep coming back, and I just say stay. Just stay. Stay.
Nice. So, what steps can someone take to get back on track from a relapse? Because there's a lot of guilt and shame that comes with that.
For me, I had to really push through that. I'll be completely honest. I went to a meeting I'd never been to before, and maybe that's a cop out, but maybe that's helpful. And I found a sponsor I didn't know anything about, and she didn't know anything about me, and so it was kind of a clean slate. Um, which I think for someone who's working in the field can be helpful.
Yeah.
But my best advice is to jump right back in, and be willing to do whatever it takes, because what were you willing to do to get high or drunk? And that's how far you got to go to stay sober, in my opinion. So like the other day I had to go to Newport to chair a meeting, and I really didn't want to go. And my sponsor said, "How far would you drive to get high?"
Oh.
And I would drive much further than that.
Yeah.
So I had to go.
That sucks sometimes when that's that accountability that we're talking about.
Yes.
You gotta have it.
You have to have it.
Yeah, I've had days where I do a lot of travel for work, and I'm like, how about I don't want to do this?
Yeah.
It's so far away.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I would have gone 10 hours if it meant.
Didn't matter.
So, having had this experience with the relapse, what do you do now to hopefully prevent that from happening again?
So I practice rigorous honesty all the time about everything. Um, and I'm sure my sponsor gets really tired of hearing me say I don't want to do stuff, but I have to, because okay, here's the thing: am I giving myself grace, or am I making excuses for myself? Because sometimes I'm doing too much, and I need a day, and I need self care, and then other times I'm full of crap, and I need to suit up and show up. And if I am only listening to my own voice, I'm always gonna take that self care day. And so I don't make those decisions by myself. I run them by my sponsor or somebody if she's not available. Like I have to get other people who are in recovery's opinions about whatever's in my head. I can't keep it in my head.
Yeah, because a lot of times our stinking thinking gets us in trouble.
My best thinking got me where I was.
So, having worked in the field, having experienced a relapse, I know a lot of times when we are working in the field, our work becomes our recovery. So, how is that gonna look differently moving forward?
Yes. So I would say that was my recovery for a lot of years. Like basically the whole time we worked at Cherokee, that was my recovery.
Yeah.
And so that has to be different now. It has to be. And I'm not saying that I have to keep doing exactly the same amount of meetings I'm doing, but in terms of like rigorous honesty and Surrounding myself even still with people in recovery, those things cannot change. And I think the difference now is that I have a tribe of women around me that really, really know me. And they know when I'm pulling back, 'cause I'm a big isolator. I will stop answering phones,
Yeah.
but they know where I live, you know? So it's like, you have to
They'll just
like,
pop in.
yeah, you have to like take away the option to do that at some point. Um, and for me, I had to really surround myself and not even just surround myself, but bare myself to these people so that they know who I am, what I'm like on a good day, what I'm like on a bad day, so that they can hold me accountable and call me out when I need it.
Nice. So looking back, if you could stand in front of yourself right before your relapse, what would you tell yourself?
Um, well, I think that girl really needed a hug. I think she missed her mom. Um, I think I probably would have told her that it's okay that you don't want to get out of bed. You know, like
Yeah.
it's okay that you don't want to go to a meeting. Um, and I probably would have encouraged her to pick up the phone and call somebody because she was really alone. You know, she was alone in all of that, and um, gosh, she's suffering.
What's life like now without her?
Very different. Um, we have, we have beautiful times. She was on life support for 3 weeks after her attempt, and I always say it was literally up and down every day. But I always say like I'm really grateful for that because um, she couldn't communicate, but she could communicate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we had some really precious time together, and I think I was given a lot of closure during that time. Um, but my brother and I are closer than ever. Um, he's like my kid,
Yeah.
like he's a lot of my life, and we try to remember mom in everything that we do. Um, I talk to her a lot, especially when I'm driving. Um, I try to I try to talk to her in the same way that I talk to my higher power, and just I think my sponsor recently told me this, and it was like a light bulb moment. I think the reason that we miss our loved ones so much when they pass is because we stop talking to them. And that's so true for me.
Yeah.
Um, so we live in her house. It's our house now. So we've redecorated some things, but she's still all over it. We have her dogs. Um, and we use humor a lot. So anytime something crazy happens, we're like, "Mom's pissed off," and we have this little Boston, um, who I think is mom just like reincarnated. She looks just like her.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, life is different. It's hard some days. Um, and I would give anything to have her back, but I'm really, really grateful for the experience because I wouldn't trade my worst day today for my best day then before.
Yeah.
Um, because this is recovery. What I had done, that wasn't. I don't want anything
Yeah.
that she had, that girl. Um, so like I said, I would give anything to have her back, but I am really thankful for the experience because it forced me to speak up and show up.
That's what we say. We find purpose in our pain. And sometimes we may not understand it while we're going through it because it sucks and it hurts. But eventually, when we see like things come full circle, it's like there's that understanding. Like it doesn't take away the pain; it's still there and it's very much real, but it's a little more bearable.
Absolutely.
Did she struggle with substance use?
She um she struggled with substance use later in her life, but I think mainly she struggled with mental illness. Um, she also had a really hard life. Um, she was in a lot of really toxic relationships. Um, for oldest kid me, I was really sick for a long time. And as you know, like it's a family disease. So she got sick and then she never got better from that. Um, and I think there this comes from a lot of outside help and step work, but I think it was just the only option she had at the time. And I could certainly understand that. Not feeling like you have another option.
Yeah.
Um, and for anyone else that's going through, losing someone by suicide, it's really easy to blame yourself. Um, but that's their choice.
Yeah.
And that's who am I to take away that choice? That was the only solution that she could find. And of course, I wish that she could have gotten to recovery and found, found a new way of life, but she couldn't, and she didn't.
Yeah.
Um, and so I